Welcome to the Campus Pastor Collective. My name is Mark Cartright. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Zach Thorpe, and he is with City Church in Norwich, New York. Zach, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on today. Let's start by giving me kind of like what's your journey and to landing in this campus pastor role?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for having me on this. This is actually a dream of mine, too, as a campus pastor for the last 5 years, is just having somebody to talk to about the exact things that I go through. And so really appreciate having this podcast.
Here we are. Let's go.
Let's do it. So I was actually not reaching out for any sort of position regarding any sort of leadership, at least at the extent in which I am in now. I started out working at a lumberyard after graduating from Valley Forge with a degree in pastoral ministry. But when I was working at the lumberyard, I just got to a point where I said, if this is all I'm doing, God, why did you send me to the Bible college? All I'm doing is stacking lumber, like I'm volunteering at my home church and doing some things like that. But I'm just like, God, I thought there was more to this, right? And I think maybe that's just that ambition coming out of Bible college, like, hey, I got my degree, I got my certificate. Let's go, God, right? Let's get at it.
Yeah.
So that didn't work that way.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, so it started actually in the lumberyard where I started to hear God like say, hey, like, it's time to get focused. And so at that time, my wife and I, we started to attend a church where our presbyter actually of our section, it was his church. And so we just kind of started to share our heart with him. And he just said, hey, like there's potential out there in the essence of what fits for you. But I was very timid, right? Like I was kind of like here I am, God send somebody else, right?
Okay.
And so it was actually my wife who was like, dude, like you've been asking and praying for this moment, and here you are being like shy about all this. And so I had to overcome that faith aspect of like trusting God in this, even though like I'm asking for it, right? And so the long story to that is that through a mentorship about 1.5 years, almost 2 years with our presbyter, he just kind of helped me show what a healthy church mindset looks like. And then he kicked me out. We joke about so he kicked me out. He sent me out. He sent me out to the current position which I've been in since 2020. And so that's kind of how we landed the role. Was just kind of there was a hole that needed to be filled here at City Church, and our presbyter was like, "Hey, I got the guy." And so we actually started our first day in the church at the campus level was the very same day the government decided to close all gatherings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, here in New York. So we were
exciting.
very much like, all right, first full-time position as lead, but as campus pastors, and no congregation to meet in person. How is this going to work? So that's
like immediate test of fire. That's one of the craziest ones I've heard. I have heard of like churches that were planting that same season, right? Like, but that's right in that same vein of like, wow, like I finally walked into the calling, right, and immediately get tested with fire. That's an incredible story. That is incredible. So I want to hit real quick before we continue. Like you said something and it resonated with me. Because I'm kind of in the same boat. And you mentioned that, you listen to your wife on that. And so a quick shout out to pastoral wives, because some days I think, and I've actually said this before to my congregation, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I'm transparent. So what do you want from me? But like some days I think my wife hears better from God than I do. Like there's just some days where it's like she's in tune. She knows what's supposed to be happening. She knows what's going on. And I'm like, well, thank goodness you hear from God, because I don't know that he's talking to me right now, or I don't know or maybe I'm not listening. It's probably I'm not listening, but praise the Lord for amazing wives who help us on this journey. So shout out to pastors' wives.
Yeah, I always say it this way. My wife, it's her faith at times that carries us.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
My faith is wavering, and she's like, dude, like we got this. Not that she
well, no. Yeah, correct. But it is, I mean, that speaks to the whole, like, not doing life alone. That is why we're supposed to do life together, but even more so why we have helpmates in our spouses is to be able to lean on each other. So that's so good. I love that you said that. It just like, as soon as you said that, I'm like, man, I've felt that so many times. All right, so that's kind of your journey getting into the campus pastor role. What's probably been your biggest surprise? I'm assuming if you're anything like me, like when you kind of stepped into the role, like we had a campus, our campus that I'm at now, like it was in existence in 2019. I didn't step into the role until 22, and so that was the only context I knew of campus site and multi-site. Was that the same for you?
Yeah,
Was this your
absolutely.
first kind of experience?
Yep. Had no context whatsoever.
So what was the thing that stood out? You're like, wow, like I knew I was going to, you went to Bible college. Like I'm going into ministry, but this surprised me about being a campus pastor.
Yeah, I guess that's a big question. I mean, I did face a lot of surprises, especially being my first full-time gig. Like I said, I've served as intermediates, and done youth ministry and kids ministry, and volunteering in pretty much every aspect besides the women's ministry at the churches that I've served at. And
Fair enough.
I mean, even that, I probably was in the kitchen most of the time eating.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
But I think the biggest surprise that I really had was really trying to understand culture, and that we're culture driven people, and that determining as a leader, when you're in a smaller ministry, you're getting that culture conversation from somebody else. But when you're the guy that has to drive that culture, it's a little different seat to sit in, right? And when I mean drive the culture, obviously as a campus pastor, I don't drive the ultimate vision of the church,
right.
But I drive the secondary at the campus level, right? And so for me, it was really like, why don't people get this? Why don't people understand? And just kind of give you some context. And our unique situation is we weren't a church plant; we were a church revitalization.
Okay.
That was originally a PAC church. So PAC just stands for Parent Affiliated Church, for those who don't know. So it's just when a church falls to the wayside and they need some support. So that's what this campus became. But the existing church board had voted, and church members had voted that we would adjust the contract with the pact contract, and that would be, instead of just becoming a healthy church again and then launch back off on its own, that we would become one and the same as our main location. And so that when I came in, there was already there had already been one campus pastor prior that just didn't work out for him and his wife. So I came in, but the problem was that the name was changed to City Church, but it wasn't the DNA. The DNA
there you go.
yet.
Yeah.
And so when I came in, it was the DNA that really became like, where is this? We're supposed to be City Church, but we're still Norwich Assembly of God. And so there was a lot of questioning of like, who are we? What is really the purpose of what we're supposed to be doing? Right. That why question really came very evident right from the beginning of like, okay, why have we not done this? Why have we not changed this? Right. And so that became probably, I would say, the biggest surprise for me was, why didn't the DNA change when we took the building?
Yeah. So how long was it that they were from the time, and roughly, obviously, like from the time that they had made the decision to become a part of City Church to when you got there?
Yeah, they took on the campus in 2017, and then I arrived in 2020.
2020. So about 3 years.
About 3 years of flexing.
And they hadn't quite gotten the DNA aspect of it yet. Man, that's so true to like multi-site campus ministry, though, is like you're either in that situation where it's a merger or, kind of a pack thing, which is still similar to like a merger or whatever, or even the planting side of campus, multi-site campuses, and it does when we're at the campus level. It all comes down to DNA. It feels like most of our conversations are like, is the team getting the DNA? Is the worship DNA? Is the kids ministry DNA? And it does seem like it always comes back to that DNA, that culture conversation. And so that's actually kind of what I think we're going to talk about today is how do we build these campuses? How do we impact our communities while staying aligned with the DNA, the culture, whether it's the mothership, the main campus, whatever those. I mean, there's 15 different terms for that. Campus one, whatever it is, how do we grow while staying aligned with that? So let's start with the big picture question: why is it important to grow and stay aligned to the sending church, the lead church?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And when I first started, we had roughly 45 people that transferred with the new location or the new identity that we are supposed to become, City Church from Norwich Assembly. And part of the issue was there was no young people, right? There was no. It was the average age was 60 plus.
Wow.
Give or take, right? And so it was a very scary moment. And so, in regards to how do we stay connected, so we started to try to get creative, right? We're trying to get out in the community more. We're just trying to get the ball rolling, just so that way people know, like, hey, we're here, we exist. And but the problem was is that every idea I had was being shut down. And so it was like, well, why? Well, that's not our DNA. That's not our DNA. So it goes back to that DNA. So when I first started, I'm like, okay, so what is the DNA? How do I
There you go.
duplicate that
That's a golden
into
question.
right
That's the
into
good
the
one.
campus level, right? And so I think that's why it's so important when we're talking about growth at the campus level is staying within the parameters that the lead has given you. There's a part that maybe we'll get into a little later, but I'm a firm believer, and it's something I've learned while in this campus position, is that God honors obedience, right?
That's good.
And we don't like to stay within those obedience at times, right? Or those moments of parameters, but ultimately we have to believe that God established that lead pastor in that position, and then He called us to lead underneath that person. And so I think that's why it's so important as campus pastors that we have to maintain that DNA. And I believe when we do that, the growth comes because we're working with the entities, not against them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
Same team.
yeah, we're on the same team, we're rowing in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we say it this way on our pastoral team: we're like we're rowing in the same boat, we're all rowing in different directions, right?
Yeah, that happens. That happens. You got to keep everybody in the
Yeah,
oars at the same direction. That's
right.
always a
That's it
struggle.
for
I think
sure.
that's any organization, not just church. So,
Yeah, no,
uh,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
we could definitely do a whole episode on honoring leadership. So we may jump to that at some point, or we may just have to
For
do
sure.
another call. Let's continue with the DNA side. So you didn't, when you got appointed here, this wasn't your church,
Correct.
correct? Did I
Yep.
catch that? Okay. So you're coming in from the outside. So not only are you having to learn the DNA, but you're trying to also get this church that didn't have the DNA. I mean, this isn't walking into like, oh, this church already has the DNA. This is going to be easy. I can learn it from both directions. No,
Yep.
like you're still trying to be conduit, but you first have to be able to connect
Yep.
to the DNA. So let's go there. What were some of the things you did to learn the DNA from the lead pastor or from the
Yeah.
mothership?
Yeah. Our the biggest thing that I did is ask questions, right?
Okay.
So when I first came in, I was similar to like what I shared earlier about how I was a little timid. Is being new. I'm like I'm the new guy. I'm also
Yeah.
young. I started out at 25, so I'm like I don't know what I have to offer to this table. But at the same time, I'm like, but God, you brought me here, so
Yep.
I had to learn to step into the identity that God had for me, and so I started to ask questions with our lead pastor and just kind of ask him like, "Hey, what is your vision for this? What is your ideas for this? How did you want this to be duplicated? Do you want us to do it the same locations? Is it different? Is it the same?" And even to this day, 5 years down the road, we're still asking the same
Oh
questions
yeah, 100%.
because
Yeah.
again, it's part of staying in sync with the mothership. Is or the main campus, whatever we call it,
Yeah. Yeah.
is really because I think what happens is we can build our own statues and go our own way if we're not careful, right? And so
Whose church we building?
yeah, exactly. And that's really what it comes down to. So I think that's how I was able to handle a lot of those challenges was just asking a lot of questions. And then the second thing I would say is I had to learn to die to self. Now that's not a popular one. It's not a fun one.
That's
Um,
it's the key to being a campus pastor, though.
it really is, right? Because again, I believe that God has put vision in my heart, in my mind,
Yep.
some ideas to do. And again, when you're in the culture that you're in, And that's, I think, the uniqueness of a campus mindset is that you're in kind of two different cultures at times. Like our main campus is more city oriented. We're more rural
Yep.
oriented. So how we contextualize that and
Yes.
execute certain things looks a whole lot different. Well,
Correct.
I didn't know that at the beginning. So for me, I'm like, well, why are we not doing that here? Like we're supposed to be one church and two locations.
Right.
Why are we not doing this service over here? Right? Why are we not bringing that here? Why? And I
Yeah.
really got into this selfishness of like, Zach, you're whining about all these things that you want, and then you're not really executing the vision in which God has already given you with the
That's good.
people that God has given me. Right. And
Yeah.
so I had to learn to die to self and recognize the people and the giftings that God puts within the people that I'm shepherding here at our campus, that it's different than our other location. And so I have to recognize that we can be unique, but we can be the same at the same time, right? And it's just what Jesus does for you and I, right? He unifies us, but he doesn't uniform us, right?
Correct.
And so there's a beautiful understanding when you get to that realization of like, hey, as a campus pastor, you can do things in similar DNA, right? The idea is, hey, we're reaching the community. We're going to give
Right.
them, right? So how do we do that in the practical? Okay, that's going to look a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so coming in without knowing how to do that, that would probably be my challenges that I had to face. But then how did I kind of get back on the right track of allowing us to continue to grow and stay within the DNA of the mothership was
Yep.
really just asking questions and dying to self.
That's good. Do you guys have so like at our context because we're two sites growing to more sites, we have what's called like a central team. And so they're like kind of like the systems drivers of the church, and so they support all locations. They're not really attached necessarily. Now some of them have multiple hats to where they also have a location
Mhm.
responsibility, but for the most part they're just kind of like the central team. And so what they do is they build all the kids ministry, the youth ministry, the worship and groups, and hey, here's how we do all these things. And then the campuses kind of are the ones that are actioning the playbook, if you will. And so for us with that, like there was what we discovered was like there was a need for um and I don't know who created it. I probably should have known this, but it's called iPod. And so it's the system of, hey, here's we use it when we first planted the church, is like what's initially required,
Mhm.
which is the I. What is the preferred method? What do we prefer to happen? What is optional? And what do we don't do? And so that's always been like and you were talking about like how you still trying to figure out some of these things on what do we do, what don't we do, what is negotiable, what's non-negotiable. Like we still do that. Like we have Easter coming up, and we do iPod for Easter. It's like, hey, because for us our services are identical, even Sunday to Sunday for the most part. They're pretty similar, same or similar worship sets, same teaching, that kind of thing. And so for Easter, we did the same thing. It's like, hey, what is at every location for Easter? What do we want at every location at Easter? What's optional? Like, hey, if you can pull this off, do it. If you can't, don't worry about it. What are we not doing? Like, what is like we're not going to do those things. And so
Yeah,
it's a good thing to be constantly in that communication. I think that's so good that you spoke to that. Like it's to constantly in that communication realm of, hey, things are always adjusting. What you don't want to do is drift, right?
mhm.
Which is the key word. This is a big word we always use is campus drift happens if
Yeah,
you don't stay connected. So we don't want to drift, but there are things that are going to be, like in our community, we may do this thing a little bit more. In the other community, though, they may be more connected there. Some of that's based off of who the pastor is, right? So
absolutely.
like I'm real connected in our school systems in my community. And so I have regular meetings and real close with each one of the principals at our schools, superintendent.
Mhm.
I have just really good close. Some of them attended our church, and so I've had really close connected relationships. And now schools are really big across. That's kind of a DNA piece for us. Like we want to be helpful to schools. So our other location is, but they don't have quite that relationship just because the pastor doesn't have that relationship
Mhm.
with those leaders. And so I think there's the non-negotiable DNA, and then like the campuses themselves end up taking on their own a little
Yeah.
bit of their own DNA, right? Like
Yes.
because we're one church,
Yep.
but our communities, even like for our two is we're same context. You got city and rural. Our communities are very much basically identical context. One has a university, one's got a community college, but otherwise we're pretty much the same. But even still, 10 miles apart, we still find times where it's like, oh, like the worship at this location is just a tad, like it's the same, but just a tad different, you know, or this one's just a little bit. And so it's kind of interesting how those things do happen. How have you ever felt where we kind of talked to this, the tension of the innovation versus alignment, right? Like you're trying to come up with concepts, you're trying to come up with ideas, but you're a campus pastor, so like you're only able to take things as far as what's allowed, allotted, whatever, with inside the boundaries, right? How have you dealt with some of that tension between those innovations and staying with the alignment?
Yeah, I will say early on I didn't handle it well. I was like,
we're all learning here, right?
I think there was a couple times where I'm like, I would Zoom with my mentor and just be like, this is not right. You know, like I'm trying to do everything in my power, what I know is effective, and it is not moving the dial whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so, and so I really just learned, to be okay with, just being okay, I guess, with the simplicities of what is already going on and not forcing so much stuff. Because I think sometimes like I'm a doer, so like I'm always doing something. And like our parishioners here, they're always like, "You're always changing something around here." I'm like, "Hey, I'm just getting you ready for life, right?" Like
That's right. Change is good, brother. Change is
right, like
required.
small change will help you with the bigger change, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, hey, you know, the principle behind it is just like there's always things that I think can get tweaked, or you know, but at the same time, it's like if I personally want to tweak it, if I'm not careful, I can get out of line, right?
Yeah. That's
And
good.
so then I have to kind of check myself and say, okay, what is the systems that we do have? What are the systems we don't have? And is this an area where instead of me just doing it as a lonesome campus pastor, can I create something where I can bring it to the pastoral team at
Yeah.
both locations and say, hey, here's a hole that we have, or here's something that we haven't really thought about. I kind of was thinking through, here's what I've come up with. And then we kind of hash it out, and then we try to execute what we can at both locations. So it really came down to just, again, I think it's a bigger conversation of dying to self, but it's really like, hey, you're not the only visionary, you're not the only guy that's got the best ideas, but write them down, bring them to the
Yeah.
table, let people hear them, and then be okay with allowing them to be picked apart. That's a big one too, right?
That's usually the biggest one, right? Because depending on multi-site makeup, you know, like I know quite a few who kind of do systems and processes the way that our church does. It's where we learned ours from, was having this central team that builds the systems and then the
Yep.
campuses execute, right?
And
But that
that's
doesn't mean
actually
I don't have ideas, right? What's that?
that's actually where we're headed towards, is we're
Yeah.
actually create that where we have a central and decentralized, right? So what is central, meaning
Yep.
it comes from the main, and then what
Yep.
is decentralized, meaning you have freedom to do.
Yeah.
We just haven't arrived at that part yet.
And it's good. Like if you're, especially if you're going to be doing more than two sites, like I think that's where it really comes into play. And that's kind of why we did it on the front side, is like we had plans to be 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever God leads us to. Right. But it can be hard because like I actually started there. So when I first came on staff, I came on as the creative arts pastor for as a central seat, and so I oversaw services and all the teams for creative arts across all locations, and so my mindset back then was very much that mindset. Hey, how do we help these our campuses function the best way that they can to execute weekend services, midweek services, whatever, you know, and how do we support our teams, make sure they have all the resources, all that stuff. So when I went to the campus role, and now I'm not creating those anymore, I'm just running the playbook, if you will, being the play caller. It is challenging to then go and say, well, I have this idea and I've already thought it out. But what you can't do, and I shared this here recently on our page, was, you know, you can't marry the solution, because A, that's not your role.
Yeah.
B, somebody else probably whose role it is probably gonna have a better idea. But you may have gotten the ball rolling, and that's all that matters, is that you're trying to help better your campus and the church as a whole. And so that's so good you talked about that, because I think we can. It's easy, and anybody's this way, not just a campus pastoring. Anybody, anytime you come up with an idea, that's all of a sudden your baby, right? Now you want to oversee that thing. It's like, well, no, that's not your role. Like, stay in the campus. Like, let somebody else go figure that out. Because there may be something that's very much better way to do it, or they've already thought through some, or maybe it affects something else, and so now it's all got to tie together where you just got to worry about you and your campus. And so that is really good. Let's talk growth. We've talked about staying connected, staying aligned. We have all these challenges. There's this tension. And as long as we die to self, keep focused on, hey, we're replicators, we're carrying that vision. But what we do want to still do is find practical ways that we can grow the church. And ultimately, we're trying to grow the kingdom. We want to fill heaven with as many souls as possible. What are some things that you've done there at City Church that has been effective with growing your church?
Yeah, I would say the greatest thing, and it's really my one answer that I usually give, is we are in the community. That's really what we did. Is when we first got here, especially like I said, when we first came here during COVID, once we finally
tons of opportunity to serve.
Yeah, exactly, right. Definitely got unique ways of getting plugged in and really getting into the community, because there was a lot of extra needs, especially during that time. But really, when we re-engaged our congregation back into person again, we recognized that a lot of people, aside from the COVID, fears and all that stuff, was that they were very self and inward focused as a church. And so we recognized, okay, that's probably why we haven't seen much growth at this campus. So, and part of how God called my wife and I into this position was part of, we heard from God, this word community came to our hearts and our minds. And so that was our confirmational moment where me at a separate time heard that and sensed that idea, and then my wife was like, hey, like I feel like we're called to do something in regards to community within our that location. I was like, boom, there it is, right? So when we got here, we said, all right, we're going to execute community, but we did ask, like, okay, what does community look like here, right? So we said, what does community look like in the church, as well as what does community look like outside the church? Meaning the church, the four walls, right? And so we started to start brainstorming. We started to bring some people on board on our team to say, hey, like, our heart is to get into the community. We want people to know who we are as a campus, right? And recognize that with specifically our location as a merge or rebrand, is oftentimes what you deal with is you're in the same facility, so people think you're the old identity,
the same church. Yep.
So you have to get out there and you have to show them who you really are, right? You're somebody different. We're new. We're not the old. And so that became a fun thing, right? We continue to find opportunities to serve the community, to press in, and through that, though, we've actually seen a lot more engagement with the community. So I call it relational evangelism. It's really what it is, right? You're in the long game. You're continually serving, continually plugging in, getting connected with stakeholders in the community. And so that's what we did. We got out in the community. We just served. We were picking up trash. We have a fall event that happens downtown for like 5 Saturdays in a row. We picked up tables and tents for the event. And through that, though, we got asked to, be part of other community events. We got invited to be part of, we have what we call Gus Macker. It's like a 3-on-3 basketball tournament that brings thousands of people out on the streets for a whole weekend. And the last 3 years we've helped with that. And as a pastor, they asked me to pray over the entire event publicly.
There you go.
So we just got out into the community. We really just got out to serve. And that's part of our DNA as a church. We're very missional oriented, both abroad as well as local. And so it really fit within the DNA of the church. As I was learning it, it was recognizing, okay, this is how one of the ways that I can cultivate the DNA of our church as a whole in the context in which I'm serving. And so, as we started to serve, we started to see people recognize, like, we are different. We are not the same as they used to be. And then people, instead of saying that's the church I don't want to be at, they're coming in and saying, hey, I saw you at this event. I saw you, cleaning up trash. Just wanted to check out the church. And so we went from 45 people 5 years ago to over 100 now. Every Sunday.
Praise the Lord.
And we went from like pretty much having no kids ministry, maybe 5 or 6 given day, to over 20 kids on a Sunday now, and no youth group, to having 12 kids in a youth, right? So like we're just seeing God's favor as we're serving, and part of the serving wasn't just to get out and do good works.
Right.
We really, our intention was, we wanted to create relationship with people, and through those relationships, the hopes was to lead people to Christ. And that's, I believe, has been the most effective way for us that we've been able to grow. And so actually back in 2013, it was kind of 13 into 14, but sorry, not 13, 2023 to 2024. I was like,
wait, too far back.
Yeah. Was we actually received, both as a church and as a pastor, we received the nonprofit organization volunteer award for our community.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah,
That is cool.
It was really just a God honoring moment to say, like, hey, when you are truly serving your community wherever you're planted, God just calls you to be obedient, and again, He's going to bless. He's going to bring forth the harvest as we become the workers, right? Luke, 10:2, right, talks about that, right? And
That's
so
so
we just want to make sure. So that's what we did, right? We just and that's what we continue to do, even as we're growing. We're continually just pressing into our community, saying, "Hey, we're here." And as you get more people, it gets more messy. But you also bring
people
more
are messy.
Yeah, people are messy, and you bring more people on the board with you, right? And get them on your leadership team, and just kind of empower them to be your hands and feet with you, right? And so,
no, 100%. Yeah, that's probably one of the things. Like, so we're very community evangelistic movement of a church. When I started just attending the church back in, would have been 2016, 2017, I think. We were one location and 400 or 500 people. Now we're 2 locations, looking for a third, and organizationally we're running over 1,000, close to 1,100. And so it's all about the community and getting plugged in and being a part. That was one of the, I'm glad you talked about that, because it was one of the first things I did. I wasn't the community I'm in now. I've always been around, but never lived in. And so I literally had bought a house in 2020 in our other community that we're in. And when I got asked to be campus pastor, it was, oh, well, I got to sell my house. I got to go buy a house, right? So like similar to you, like I'm moving to a community. And so we moved to the community, but then it's like, well, outside of the 150 people we had, I didn't know anybody really. Like I didn't have a lot of connections. And so so I know what I did. Before I do that, what did you do what were some like literal, like I did this to get in the community? Like I made a phone call, I went and knocked on door. What was something super practical you did to plug yourself in?
Like that's what I was doing. I was searching in whatever avenue I could to get I looked for different events that were happening. Again, during 2020, not a whole lot was going on just because everyone was trying to stay away from each other. But there was one entity that actually was what actually got us kind of really sparked everything. It was Easter of 2020, and there was a key leader in our community that really had a heart to want to keep the community together even through that time. And so she ended up putting on an Easter trunk or treat type thing. So all the trunks were Easter themed. And so
that's good.
We just said, hey, this is a great opportunity to spark it, right? To get people to know like who we are. We're City Church now. We're not the old. So that was actually the first event we ever did as a church in the new DNA of City Church to really get in. So we brought the church van down with all the logo. We bagged a bunch of candy. And we were just there, right? And I mean, I think it was like 300 or 400 people ended up coming through, and it was the largest. Like, it was a big thing. It was the largest thing that has happened in the whole year of 2020.
Right?
And so from that, though, we were the only church to be a part of that.
Wow, there you go.
And so we were like, all right, and it was just to say, okay, maybe we're doing something unique. Maybe we're doing something that they never thought of. Who knows, right? I don't, each entity is kind of where they're at.
Whichever, yeah.
And so for us, so I started to seek that, and then I started to say, like, this could be a good thing. And so I literally started to look on Facebook, within the communities that I'm in, just trying to find different events that are happening. I started making emails and phone calls to say, hey, can we as a church get plugged in? This is what we can offer. And slowly and surely, like the name City Church kind of started ringing in people's ears all around town.
That's good.
And then what we did is the 2021, we decided to do. So I'm a firm believer of not creating everything ourselves, right? Like get plugged into what's already out there.
Yeah, what's already happening. There's plenty of stuff happening.
Like you don't have to have the creative mindset to say, hey, I can go out reach out to the community, right? Like go join something that's already happening. Go the field days of your community. Go do a table and art face paint, right? Just love on people, love them with Jesus. Right? So anyway, we decided to do one big outreach, what we call Fam Jam. And so what it is it's meant to just be a family fun day, essentially. Everything's free food, bounce houses, all the sorts. But what I decided to do is I decided that I wanted to not just have fun, but I also wanted to meet a need. And one of the needs that we recognized within our community was a lot of parents. We live in a very low income area. And so a lot of parents can't afford a lot of the school supplies. So we did a backpack giveaway with school supplies.
Hey, there you go.
And as well as offered free haircuts at the event. So our first time we did it, we had over 500 people show up, and in a community of 9,000 people, right? So
that's impressive.
We were like,
that's amazing.
So again, it was just more or less getting them to know, like, hey, we're here to love on you, to be a part. And we had some families come from that and now are part of our church and are serving in multiple capacities. People have gotten saved and baptized through that, right? So it's just
so good.
So it was a really awesome opportunity. So that's just kind of how we've just kind of branded ourselves out there, and it's and then we protect ourselves within. And when I say protect ourselves, I mean we create opportunities within the church as well for community. So we don't just say, hey, just get out and get out. But we establish opportunities within the community or within the church as well for I know that was a longer answer and
no, you're good. No, 100%.
Question about what did I practically do?
But that was good.
It really comes down to putting yourself out there.
Just getting plugged in. Yeah, I mean, it's really that simple. When I first came over, that was one of the first things I did was I emailed each of the principals and said, hey, I want to invite you to breakfast, and then did the same thing with the mayor, like, hey, we ended up just meeting at his office. He didn't have time for a breakfast, but it was just that, hey, like it can be that simple as email all the principals, email the superintendent, email the mayor. And I did. I said, hey, you're with the mayor. I said, you're a mayor. You got all this stuff going on, but there's something that you can't do. There's something you can't because you're tied up because you're the mayor or because it's government. If you had a nonprofit at your disposal, somebody who could help you take care of some need inside of our community, what would it be, right? And it was as simple conversations like that no guarantees, right? Like you're not making any promises, but you're opening the door to say, hey, like that's what I'm here to do. Absolutely. Is to serve the community and serve you in any way I can. So that's super good, man. I love the backpack thing. We talk about doing that with our church all the time. There's another local church in my community that does that, and it goes. And I'm not trying to compete with them, but like just in addition to, it's like it's such an effective way of being able to make a big impact and meet a real need. I love those. I love when I see churches doing those programs. All right, as we start to wrap up today, we want to give out some advice. So what's the one thing that if you were sitting in on a stage at a campus pastor conference, you would say, hey, here's the one thing every campus pastor needs to know?
There's a list.
Just easy question to wrap up with.
Yeah, right. I would honestly say is don't get so high on yourself. Don't think that your value is determined by your position, but recognize that God has placed you in this position for the right reasons that you have, right? The giftings that you have, the abilities, the stories, the experience. I think we discount ourselves because we see ourselves as secondary, but in reality, God has put us in such a vital role that even as a campus pastor, I forgot that when I first started. Well, I didn't forget that. I had to learn it. And then I kind of didn't want it because I didn't want to hear it for myself, right? I didn't want to hear that because in my mind, again, it's tied into the die to self, but it's really like, for me, I'm like, no, I want to be lead. I want to be the guy in charge, right? I want to, and I'm like, that's kind of selfish of me, right? Like it really is. And because I recognize that if I'm not focused on what God has assigned me to right now and the people that are in front of me, I'm going to lead people astray and I'm going to lead myself astray. And so I would say the biggest advice is like, be who God has called you to be, right? Be the best campus pastor you can be. Don't try to be your lead pastor. Honor that second chair, honor the first chair, right? And recognize that what God has given you is going to propel the ministry forward, right? And as long as you're continuing to be obedient to what you're doing. So yeah, there's so much I could add to that.
No, you're good, man.
That's my heart is really, I just, because I learned, right? I learned early on, like, not to compete, not to get jealous, but I learned to just be content in the position that God has me. And I'm telling you, I've especially the last 2 years, we've gone through a lot of faith tests here at the campus level. We've had a worship leader pretty much after 20 plus years of being part of the main campus came to ours to help us and then left us. Because of a tension that wasn't being willing to be dealt with in a mature way on their end. And so, that was devastating, right? As a first time losing a volunteer worship pastor or worship leader, I should say, what do you do, right? How do you handle all those things? And it's like, okay, you don't have all the resources. So recognizing that, you're put in this place and in this role, it's essential to lead the sheep that God has put under your leadership. And as you do that, all the other things God takes care of, as long as you're being obedient to the assignment that He's given you. So, so stay true to who you are and which God called you to be. Don't lose focus on what the assignment is, because if you do and you try to be someone that God didn't call you to be, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, man, that's so good. That's so good, man. I love it. We could just probably spend the next hour doing this, but we're going to wrap up today. We're just going to have to schedule another call, man. We're going to do another call. We'll just get you back on. We'll just have an episode 2.0 with Zach Thorpe. So, all right. Well, thanks again, Zach, for joining us again. City Church, guys, check them out online. You can see I went and looked through their website. There's a phenomenal, amazing church happening out there in New York. So, shout out to Zach. Thank you for joining us today. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you can take one thing away from today, helping you to become the greatest campus pastor God has called you to be. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Campus Pastor Collective. We'll see you next time.